Hi everyone, good afternoon. It's been a long day. I would be quick with this. We'll be talking about AWS things you wouldn't do with Django and how to do them. I think this is the longest title I've ever had in giving a talk ever because I couldn't find the perfect title to give it. But yes, I think how many people here are familiar with Django? Like you use Django regularly or okay, if you're hearing about Django for the first time, or you know it, or you just know about it, okay, then okay. So Django is a web framework, but we'll still get into it later. But basically, we're looking at what Django allows us to do traditionally, and how that differs from what we want to do with it sometimes. The things we can do to get around that, and have the results that we want to have in the end. So about me, I am Elizabeth Adegbaju. Most people call me Ade. It's from my middle name Adeotun, which you might see somewhere in the slide. But I do cloud and DevOps at Kreiswerker. I try not to introduce myself with a role, but I'm into cloud, AWS cloud to be specific, and DevOps methodologies, things around DevOps and stuff like that. I also am a Google Women Technical Ambassador. So what this is, it's about women leaders building communities in their own space and doing what they can to give back to the tech community, like what I'm doing here today. And I also happen to be an AWS community builder. I came from Munich actually. I don't stay here in Copenhagen. And I started a community recently, so it's Women of Color Tech Connect, to support women of color in tech and everyone that is interested in contributing to that. So that's like a summary of what I do in the tech space, and I think we can get right into it now. So yes, I do cloud and DevOps at Kreiswerker, and it's why I am able to have this talk today because there's that flexibility to explore even the things that I want to do, and they sponsor me. So yes, I have to put it up here. And um, so yes, Django and AWS. I asked a question in the beginning. How many people here are very familiar with Django? I assume we are definitely familiar with AWS because this is an AWS themed event, but maybe I'll do a little touch on Django. So Django is a web application framework. It's a web framework built on Python, and it actually is like my first love in tech because I built my first real application with Django, and I don't think I abandoned it ever since then. It's really robust. It allows you to just jump right in from the start. There's a lot of built-in stuff. It also makes it quite heavy compared to some other lighter like web frameworks. But if you ask me, I would say if the size of the project you want to build fits Django, then why not go for it? You have authentication built in from the start. You have the whole admin dashboard. You can actually just create your models and deploy an application the same day. That's what Django looks like essentially. But when yes, this is the Django documentation page. And I think I really got to like Django because of how nice the documentation is. The community is really vibrant, and there is so much like third-party libraries, people contributing to the documentation. It's easy to read, it's easy to love, and I think I read the entire documentation front to the end before I started programming in some other languages. So this is Django. And then let's look at what an ideal Django application is. Remember that our talk today is about, oh, the things you wouldn't do with Django and AWS and how to do them. But what would be the normal things you can do with Django? I mentioned built-in authentication. And the way Django works, by default, it has its own user authentication. Of course, there are documentations on how to customize it, how to extend it. There's always, oh, the extension, but even those extensions still have their limits. You can customize your your Django user. You can, specify in your settings that this is the new Django user I want to use. But still, they are still stored in the same kind of database, for instance. They are still using SQL kind of requests behind the scenes. And what happens to if you want a user that isn't stored in some SQL database somewhere? Those are the kind of questions that you ask yourself when you want to step out of the boundaries that Django already provided for you. We have, like I said, the relational database, the ORM. So there's the object relational mapper that comes with Django. It's really beautiful. It's really powerful, especially if you go into the one that is specialized for PostgreSQL, and then you can make some really, 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 really beautiful queries, like searching with ranks from the beginning and being able to just search from the go. Like some things are so beautiful in Django that you wouldn't want to try other things. But if you had the constraints that I had when I was building this project, I'll show you the project. But if you had the constraints I had when I was building this project from the beginning, you wouldn't even look at everything here. I'll tell you my constraints later too, but yes, there's the relational database with Django that's really nice. And then there's the admin interface. I liked this the most. It was a way for you to like get into your database without having to go through the tables in your database. So you could actually navigate through your database. You could, hyperlinked kind of things. And it was really cool to be able to do that. And you could even customize it if you're ready to go deep into the admin thing. You could really customize it, add your own brand colors, and just ship it to your boss as, oh, I built an admin database. I mean, it worked really good. But this is nice, but it may not always work for what you want it to do. Someone will ask me that, why modify Django so much when you have other options? Like there are other web frameworks that don't have so much baggage, and you could easily customize them from the scratch. But you also want the speed that comes with, oh, launching out with Django. You just don't want some other things with it. I mean, it's fine to have both if you want and if you are ready to do the work. And that's what brought me to where I am today. So this application is really simple. It was a hobby project. It's really tiny, and the name is really corny. I don't know. I'm having issues with naming these days, but yes, frames is for an application that deals with frames. And now the description of the application sounds very silly. I think I should explain it better. So I was preparing for International Women's Day event, and we had this beautiful frame that we wanted people to use, but we didn't want them to start sending in their pictures to us for us to frame it and send it back to them. I tried searching for some applications that could do it. There were some integrations with like existing platforms, like maybe speaker platform and stuff. But there was no way for me to put my own frame that I wanted to put there. They had maybe you type something and then they'll add it to the frame. Like you type your job description, then they'll put it on this Umbre frame or something. But I wanted a totally different frame. We already had the image given to us by Google, and we wanted to have that whole campaign and have the pictures. And I said, oh, why not? I will build this thing in a day with Django. It didn't take a day because of all the things I wanted to do with it. But I was like, I'll just build an application and launch it to people, and then they will do it. And I sat down, and that's where my constraints came in. I wanted something totally free. I didn't want to spend a dime on the application that I wanted to host, like launch it in prod. And I wanted to also explore my AWS skills. I don't know if my company is going to see this recording, but I wanted to do AWS things so that I could log it like with company time and stuff, because I'm paid to learn more about AWS. So I was like, okay, I have to try and use AWS services only. And I wanted to use free services because I didn't want to deploy it on my company account. It was kind of personal, kind of. but I could log my learnings along the way and share it with my colleagues. So I started with AWS, and then I started looking for all the AWS free tier things that I could um, use. And that was what brought me to DynamoDB. It brought me to, of course, S3 is quite widely used. It brought me to Cognito, like the authentication and everything. I didn't want to use any database that was hosted on something somewhere because they were expensive. And if I wasn't going to use the database, I had to change my user model too because I didn't want to store the user somewhere. So that was what brought me to exploring how to plug these random things together with Django. And I found out that a lot of people had written a lot of things about them, and some just got lost somewhere. And then we have libraries that are no longer maintained. There was this really promising one for Cognito authentication, Django wrapper, and I think the last time it was maintained was like 7 years ago, but it was so beautiful. And the fact that things like this keep dying is proof enough that um, there are not enough people that are willing to, use it or step out and see. Because on the official page of Django, you see, oh, supported databases, and they list everything, and we just go with that. And then you see, oh, they now add a little section in the site that says um, some third-party libraries that are not, maintained by Django, but you can try it out. And I looked through them. There was nothing for DynamoDB, for instance. And I was surprised because, I mean, AWS is really big. There should be some things that are really widely known. But yes, I found one, which I used, and I'll show you. But yes, that's the story of how we got here. And so building frames with AWS. These are the services that I used. I used DynamoDB for my database, of course. Then AWS Cognito for the user authentication. I used S3 for file storage. I think S3 is quite default and widely known for like every storage. It's also cheap. And then we have the AWS App Runner for deploying. So this was my first time actually using App Runner. With Django, I always went with Elastic Beanstalk, and I think I was also, exploring, trying to deploy stuff. And this took a lot of tweaking for me because App Runner, I think App Runner is one of the main reasons why we didn't even get to deploy it on the first day. Because at some point, I switched back to Elastic Beanstalk. I deployed it, and then I'm like, no, will I give up like that? I took it down and then went back again to make sure App Runner worked. And the main problem I had with App Runner, I would say it here, is that I couldn't find the logs. So there was the separated logs. There was the log that is logging the deployment, and then there was the application log that is logging what is happening inside the application. And I would just see, oh, it gets to a point, and then the deployment fails. No more information. And trying to find out where the logs were, then I found this link that just was changing the date and stuff. And I found out that was where the logs were, just in case you ever have that problem. And then I used SSM parameter store for the secrets management. I think you can guess why I use SSM parameter store instead of secrets manager, because it's free. Yeah, because it's free. You have to pay money to use Secrets Manager. And yes, so everything I used here, I didn't pay anything for it, and that was why I picked them. And yes, so it would have been nice for me to be able to explore like the entire code base, and then you can prod and check everything. But my slides didn't allow me to paste every single code I wrote. But yes, this is what a model with DynamoDB would look like. I picked DynamoDB in the end, and I think you should check it out if you're interested. I'm kind of determined personally not to let that one die. It looks like it's thriving. The library and the community, is thriving, and it's a good support for DynamoDB. I like that it has like 3 levels of API connection. So it has like these models that we're already used to in Django. With Django models, you could directly map your database tables to like object-oriented programming. So each class in your Django models represents a table, And you could do very, very similar thing with DynamoDB, which I thought was really nice. And then you have the table connection too, and then you have the connection levels. So you can even have like direct connections, almost like the Boto 3 clients, where you can make direct calls, requests, fetch lists, and manipulate the database directly. So even though you are making use of like models in a Django way, you can still use this connection or the table connection level to manipulate, like really manipulate maybe batch edits, transactional posts in your database, and you can still have those kind of flexibility that you have with DynamoDB. And yes, like I said, this is what a model looks like. So you can see, if you're familiar with Django, you probably see something like models dot foreign key, models dot like different kind of model attributes. Here too, you have different kind of model attributes, but you can still create more attributes that would work better for you. It's just the most common ones that you have. So you have the Unicode attribute, which is like the car in car, yeah, car character. In Django, you have Boolean, number, those kind of basic ones, like primitive, yes. And yes, that's kind of summary for database. So if you check, I added some links at the end. If you check their official documentation, you see very, very detailed instructions on how to install, how to set up, like how-to guides, the way they also have in Django. So the documentation is really, really good too, and you can check it out. Then, oh yeah, so authentication. Like these are some things that I did, because the authentication actually has a lot more code. I tried to add a section of the code base in the next slide, but here I thought it would be better to capture everything that you need to do to make sure it runs well. So you would want to create a custom Cognito model. And I think I need to point that this would align with your database structure. So when I made this project, I mean, I tried to couple everything together, but you might not want DynamoDB. You might just want Cognito authentication, or you only want to deploy with App Runner, or you only want to use. You don't have to use every single thing together, but if you are going to be using Cognito, then based on how your database structure is, that's what is going to determine how you create your user model. So what I had in my own project was, I had a very simple user model that wasn't directly plugged into the database. How will I explain that? Yes. I had a very simple user model. So just think of a Django class, and then you think of some methods for that class that I put to perform functions. But it wasn't inheriting like from the base user model that you would normally do if you're customizing. So those kind of minor differences may really impact what your end results are. If I was getting from the base user model, for instance, it's going to be using a lot of the defaults, or rather the base user methods too, that would be trying to commit to database and all of that. So I had to make a lot of changes like that, so that when you create a user, it actually is making direct calls to DynamoDB to update this person's hash. Yes. So next thing would be to set up your Cognito authentication backend. So you want to make sure that you include this in your settings. If you don't include it in your settings, then it will be using the default authentication method. And you can create a custom middleware if you have more things that you want to do. So at first, I was creating a custom middleware. Then I just stopped because I was getting so carried away with all the things that I was exploring that I almost forgot about the deadline with my with the actual event that we're having. So yes, you can create a custom middleware. What you might want to do in your middleware is maybe intercept your requests and do some different kind of token authentication. Maybe you have APIs. Like there are some things that you may want to have in your own custom middleware that you don't, that is different from what already happens in the default like authentication pipeline. And then if you decide to add a custom middleware, then remember to comment out the authentication middleware. I try not to remove things outright in my settings file so that I can go back if I want to. And I would advise you to just comment it out if you don't want to use the default authentication middleware and have a custom one. And this is the code, a portion of the code that I have for my Cognito authentication backend. So essentially what this does is to create your Boto3 client for Cognito, and there's a try and accept block that tries to authenticate the client. No, tries to authenticate the user with the client. So this get secret hash is another function that I already had that generates the secret hash. So it uses the client's email and then my Cognito user pool ID to create that hash, and then that's what you're going to use to authenticate. But if you check the Cognito documentation also, you will get very detailed information on how to implement this. But yes, you need to build your custom Cognito authentication backend. And okay, this one is pretty simple. I decided to deploy with App Runner, yes. And there came the aspect of my secrets. I wanted to use secret parameter, of course, because, no, sorry, not secret parameter. Parameter store on SSM, because I knew it was cheaper than using secrets manager. You could use any of them to store your secrets and use this value from parameter in your app runner config file. So this, what it does is that it retrieves the secrets from the location that you put there using the role that is assigned to your app runner. So if you want to be retrieving secrets like this, then you need to make sure that the role you attach to your app runner has the right permissions to retrieve the secrets. I could as well just go to my console and click, put in my secrets directly as like environment variables or something for my app runner. But this actually gives you a whole lot of freeway. You declare this secret once, and you can call it from multiple codes. You can call it from different, even different total AWS environment if you share your secrets manager key. So there's so many things that you can do differently if you want to try it out. I would say if you just want to do it, then you can try it. So here I used this instead of using the click ops because the DevOps in me wouldn't allow me to do that. And yes, that was my deployment. And I think we're at the end now. So this is what I have to say to you. There's no special big thing in my talk or whatever I was showing you, but I was just showing you all the new things that I tried, the new things that I learned. And I hope that you go with the motivation, regardless of whatever you may have picked up here, that, oh, even if the documentation says that these are the official things, I mean, don't try it on prod, but you can try it in your own comfortable room with your own system, and if your company allows you to charge it also to company money and stuff, but still try them. Try them, go as far as you can go. My constraints put me, if I say these constraints outside, people will probably laugh at me, but it's the truth. I don't have architectural decision records, but my constraints are valid. I wanted to use free products, and I got to use them while plugging and making things work together along the way. So yes, thank you for listening to my talk, And I hope that you keep pushing boundaries and do whatever it is you want. Thank you. So I added some links. I think you will only be able to get them if you get the slides, but I'll find how to make that available. And yes, any questions? Nice. Oh, you have a question? Okay. And you can connect with me. Okay, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. If you want. I would want, but yeah. Thank you.